distribute a lot of Bibles in different countries, in different parts of the world. In fact, we have teams going from Canada. A couple of teams went last year, and their main purpose for going is went into North Africa, and they smuggled Bibles into countries where you just can't get Bibles. So we're still very much about that. I mean, we've expanded our work. It started with Brother Andrew back in 1955, 70 years ago, with just a little Volkswagen Beetle, smuggling Bibles behind the Iron Curtain, because he knew that the believers, they were isolated and they didn't have access to the Word of God.
Now, interesting. I was going to say, interesting that you said the word smuggling there a whole bunch of times, and I remember vividly I was told, don't say that. It's creative distribution. You can't tell them we do things illegally and so on. But I guess you got to call the truth is the truth, isn't it?
Well, look, I won't mention any countries, okay? So we'll just, we can call it what, I still call it smuggling.
Yeah, well, okay.
We have the book, we have the story of Brother Andrew, in a book called God's Smuggler, right? And it outlines his whole, the way the ministry began, 70 years ago. And of course, I was going to say, we've expanded our ministry. Now we work in more than 70 countries around the world. And we help believers in so many different ways now.
Now, having said that, all kidding aside, the topic is very, very dark. There's about estimated 380 million Christians around the world who experience a very high level of persecution, of discrimination, simply because of their Christian faith. 380 million. Is that a fair number?
Yeah, that's a fair number. It actually represents about 1 in 7 Christians globally that experience high to severe persecution for their faith.
Now, speaking of that, too, you came up with something, not you personally, but your group, came up with what's called the World Watch, where you put together a list every year. You release it in January, so very timely for us to talk right now, a kind of measurement of persecution in the world. The World Watch list picks out 50 countries where I guess you could say faith would cost Christians the most. Why this list? Why is it important?
Well, we feel it's important because the research that's behind it, which happens throughout the year, by the way, it happens on the ground, in the field, and also, obviously people working behind desks to compile all of this information. And so we like to have our finger on the pulse of what's happening with Christian persecution around the world, because that's what directs our work. So instead of taking stabs in the dark about, we think, something's happening over here, or maybe it's happening over here, we actually know we have the data that shows what's happening around the world. It also helps us to, speak truth to power. We go to, even here in Canada, other countries do this as well, but in Canada, we go to Parliament Hill and we present the research, the World Watch List research every year. And we've been doing that for the last 8 years. And we have a growing number of MPs that are showing up to these events. And so, when we go, we're able to present to them some qualified research, not just ideas that we have or feelings that we have. Here's the research that, and we can back up the research. And so we feel it's important for those reasons. One, it helps direct our work, and then, it helps us to speak truth to power.
Now, this is not new, of course. How long have you been publishing this list?
This list this is our 31st year.
Wow.
Publishing the World Watch List. So, we've got some experience doing it for sure.
Now, of course, the 2025 list is out. And do you see any dramatic shifts, any dramatic changes to spots in the world where you would perhaps strongly advise Christians not to go there?
Well, there's lots of places where we're advised not to go. We have Canada tells us, the government of Canada tells us some places that we shouldn't go as well. But, we know that there are believers there. And, As a ministry, we are there. We work with partners on the ground in those countries to get the help to the Christians that need it on the ground. This list changes from year to year. So, the list is really a ranking of the top 50 countries. And so within that 50 countries, there's some juggling that happens from year to year. I will say that North Korea has been on that list since 2002 as number one, except for 1 year in 2022 when the Taliban took over in Afghanistan, and then that propelled Afghanistan to number one place. Mind you, they were neck and neck for a few years, but North Korea was always the most dangerous place. That doesn't mean in 2022 that things got better necessarily for people in North Korea. In fact, they got worse. But it was that much. It was more intense for people in Afghanistan in that year because of what was happening in the political landscape and the Taliban going searching out Christians from house to house and so on.
Now, you called it the top 50 countries, and arguably that maybe we should be saying the worst 50 countries, because this is real. This is life-shattering. This is life-threatening. We're not talking about people that make fun of you for being a Christian. We're not talking about people who say that you're brainwashed and you're looking to a book that's a book of myths. We're talking about people who take your life for being a Christian. Can you gently kind of describe some of the outrage that exists in these 50 countries?
The interesting thing is that we look at it from a North American standpoint. And, I think we are, in North America, we tend more to rage and revenge and those kinds of things. But the Christians that live in these countries are amazing examples to us of what forgiveness really looks like. And I mean, they are people that, pray for their persecutors. They're, they just show us what real faith should look like under those kinds of conditions. I know that you mentioned that we're saying the top 50, and we maybe should saying the worst 50 or whatever. And I know that people often say to me, this is a very sad list, and of course it is. Our brothers and sisters are going through unspeakable persecution in these places. But, I also point out to them that it does outline, that kind of persecution to us and the realities of that, but it also is, in a way, a list of where God is working in some of the greatest ways in the world today. And it's in these countries that are persecuting Christians. The Christians are seeing God move in miraculous ways that we haven't seen here for a long time.
Yeah, it's not to qualify what's going on, but rather to simply state a fact. But the Bible and Jesus himself foretold us all that we would be persecuted just for following him. Just merely being a follower of Christ will put you on that persecution list. And he didn't pull any punches on it. He said it's going to be severe. And people forget. Some people don't know, but some people forget that of his 12 disciples, most of them ended in horrific death. But before dying, before being killed, in fact, they were given the chance to live. All they had to do was denounce Jesus. All they had to do was saying he was not the Son of God, he was not real, that he was just perhaps a figment of their imagination, or worse, maybe just plain a man. But every single one of them accepted death rather than renounce him. And that's the kind of persecution that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that played out all the time around the world today. Even young people that, leave a certain religion and they convert to Christianity and, rather than renounce Jesus, they would rather die and say that. And oftentimes they do for that reason.
Yeah. Gary, who puts together your list?
We have a team called our World Watch Research team, and they're the ones that put it together. They're located in Europe, but they work in all of the different countries. We have, like I said, we have key people in all of these countries where we work, and in these countries, then we gather the information far and wide from different parts of the country.
Now, have you had
It's a team, a team that puts it together, and they're located in Europe.
Have you had any feedback, though, from those offending countries? Did you ever get any communiques or threats?
Oh, absolutely. We get that all the time. In fact, we're blacklisted in most of these places.
Well, and yet
they don't like it.
And yet you still operate in a whole bunch of countries. So they must know you.
Yeah, but we don't use the name of the organization in any of the countries.
Gotcha. But it is dangerous, perhaps for you personally and for your organization.
Yeah, it's dangerous. I was in a country in August, and I'm telling you, what a sense of relief when I finally got on the plane to leave. We were escorted everywhere from that hotel. There was just a small group of us, and we were escorted with a Jeep ahead of us with 4 guys with machine guns in the back, and one guy on the van with us with a machine gun, just to go around to try to meet with Christians and go into the IDP camps and find them and so on. I mean, it's just very dangerous stuff. But my wife doesn't like it, but I say to her, thank God, the Lord willing, I get to come home. I get to leave there, but they don't. They have to stay, Oh,
I do know. Yeah. And one wonders then, with such danger and such commitment, and that is, of course, the commitment of Christianity, what does the World Watch list actually make any difference publishing it?
We feel it does. Absolutely. Because again, we can take the research and we can speak to it. This list is being presented in many different Western countries. It's being presented to parliamentarians so that they know exactly what's going on in the world. And so we have been able to speak to, for instance, people in Nigeria, and we've seen some improvements to what's happening to Christians there, because last couple of years, they were it was the average of, I think, 14 Christians a day that were being put to death for their faith. This past year, we saw it's 8. It's down to 8 Christians a day. So, that's the country with the most violence towards Christians. But I think we do see change. We do see, as we advocate for these people, using the research, backing up the research, some of these people decide that they need to take action.
Is there anything that we can do to help the actual people being persecuted?
I would just say, I know it sounds trivial to us, but if you ask them that question, the number one thing that they're going to say to you is, pray for us. They just want us to pray for them and not to forget them. And so that's what I would say, is just to pray. And if God leads you to give to an organization like Open Doors, then, that's great as well, so that we can actually do the work that we're doing with them, helping them in so many different ways.
To further that question about how our listeners might get involved in your efforts, where do they see the list and how do they contact you?
Yeah, so I think the best thing is just to head on over to our website, which is opendoorscanada.org, and you can download a copy of the World Watch list. And then also you can kind of, if you're looking around, you'll see lots of different resources, because we exist to provide those resources in Canada for the Canadian church to be praying for our persecuted brothers and sisters around the world. So I would say the number one thing is to just go to the website and get the information from there.
Gary, thank you for your courage. Thank you for your effort that, to a large extent, is on our behalf as well. And thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Maybe we'll talk to you next January, if not before.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime, Bill.
Be safe out there.
Happy to do it.
Bless you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye now.